Well, ladies and gentlemen, at the time of recording is October 7th. We all know what happened on October 7th. That may not seem important to the videos of today, but they are, because in typical fashion, the South African government is retarded and does really retarded nonsense. And this is the first news story that the South African Medical Association has formally terminated all professional and bilateral relations with the Israeli Medical Association, the IMA, after what it describes as broad deliberations among its board members. Now, I don't really know what that is. And if you look at the actual members of the South African Medical Association, you'd wonder how they were professionals in medical. I mean, you could have a look on screen. Does this look like a person who knows how to, I don't know, diet maybe? But in any case, the SMA's statement released on Saturday, October the 5th, said that it would also petition the World Medical Association, the WMA, to suspend the IMA as a member, claiming that Israeli doctors had failed to speak out against atrocities in Gaza. So apparently now all you need to do to be guilty of something, according to the South African associations, is just not talking out about atrocities, even though it had nothing to do with you, you're a doctor. Anyway, this decision follows months of lobbying from pro-Palestinian advocacy networks and internal pressure from SAMA members sympathetic to the ANC's official foreign policy. So many of you say, why is this important? Well, because again, you can see here is the ANC and pro-Palestinian advocacy networks hard at work in order to change South Africa's foreign policy, even so far as in places such as the Medical Association, which many would argue actually has nothing to do with pro-Palestine. And some suggest that, again, this shows just how far the South African government has been infiltrated by, well, activists and foreign agitators through a conflict abroad that has nothing to do with the South African population as a whole. Now, according to the SAMA, they've demanded that the Israeli Medical Association must publicly call for the release of all detained Palestinian doctors, nurses, and health workers, condemn the systematic destruction of Gaza's healthcare infrastructure by the Israeli Defense Forces, and reject the use of starvation and blockades as a method of warfare, and advocate for the immediate entry of food and medicine. They must also guarantee access to adequate medical care for all detainees and Palestinians in custody underneath Israeli control. Now, the South African Medical Association says that this suspension will remain until the Israeli Medical Association takes verifiable action on these points, as if somehow they are now the world arbiters, somehow they are now world police. I don't know how, but anyway, they said they would also boycott the Declaration of Taipei Working Group, a global medical ethics initiative currently chaired by Israel. Now they're even going far as to just boycott things that are just being chaired by Israel, even if they are globalist type organizations. Apparently, the association justified its move as an expression of medical ethics, human rights, and the sanctity of healthcare during war. Now, critics argue that the entire stunt is nothing more than performative and hypocritic, because during the COVID-19 issue, the Israeli medical scientists helped sequence and trace the beta, the South African variant, and Israeli firms ran vaccine trials on South African soil, and Israel shared digital pandemic tech with South African hospitals. So we were instrumental in helping South Africa combat the COVID-19 strain. But by politicizing healthcare collaboration, the SAMA could potentially isolate South African medicine from world-class partnerships, including trauma, oncology, and cardiac research, all of which Israel leads globally. But you see, this is the problem. What we're seeing in South Africa is we don't care about what's good for the nation. We don't even care about which parties come here and help us, such as when America comes through and invests in South Africa. All we care about is the ANC's ideology and the ANC's legacy alliances with all the people they think helped them in the past. Let us not forget that Nelson Mandela and Yasser Arafat, the founder of the Palestinian Authority, were both trained by the Soviets together. And so there's always been this solidarity between the two, because they think, I don't know, they owe each other one or something. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. But in any case, what we can say is that the same organization that relied on Israeli science to save South African lives now denounce Israeli doctors for nothing more than political virtue points. And this fundamentally is why this issue is so important. I know everybody's bored of listening about Israel, but it's the political hypocrisy, the political virtue signaling, all being sought by the ANC and the ANC's allied advocates, all of which are leading South Africa down this path of destruction. But before we go further on this video, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, and join. Now, talking of political point scoring, let's go on to the next news story, and this is around Mandela, the grandson of Nelson Mandela, who has now been released from Israel after being detained by Israeli forces for attempting to breach the Gaza blockade. Now, if you've watched my videos on this yesterday, you'll know that he was sitting there going, oh, I'm going to be killed and tortured and whatever other rubbish. But apparently, the group that he was part of has been accused by Israel of being a political provocation which had been masquerading as a humanitarian aid. In other words, Israel saying that the entire thing, to try to class them as being the villains in the story, is somehow this evil conspiratorial state that was going to just villainize this group. Well, apparently, according to Israel, that was all part of the plan. And if you've seen any of the leaked documentation and the leaked videos, pretty much collaborates that this was a coordinated propaganda campaign in order to try to paint Israel in a certain light. So let's actually look to see how they're doing that. But as you know, after political negotiations, there was no negotiations. The Israelis just said, for God's sake, get out of here. That took some time to arrange. The group was transferred to Jordan, who was then received by the South African ambassador in Jordan, and then they were sent en route to Oliver Tambo's airport. Like, that's exactly what you'd expect. And Durko's minister, Ronald Lamola, praised Mandela as being a humanitarian hero. Though after many individuals complained and noted that this humanitarian hero was somehow doing this whole virtue signaling stunt on the taxpayers' fund, the department, Durko, later clarified that the return to South Africa was funded privately by the family and solidarity groups. I don't know, maybe the Mandela Foundation, and not by government funds. Now, Mandela's wife, who had issued an emotional statement that he would be killed in Israel, even though that was never going to happen ever, issued an emotional statement thanking South Africa for their support and called the ongoing conflict in Gaza a genocide of silence. I mean, what a load of trash. He was literally told by the Israelis that they would keep him detained until they could deport him, and then they deported him, and now we're like, oh, thank God that South Africa did what? Sat there and waited to receive him at the airport? I don't know what the freak these people are on. So again, you may be looking at me going, well, why is this even important? Because again, it shows you where the political point scoring is. We got Mandela protesting Israel, all whilst the South African government ignores our own humanitarian failures. Load shedding of hospitals, collapsing rural clinics, unpaid doctors. And here we've got an individual, Mandela, who inherited his grandfather's surname, has no form of statesmanship, and goes there to Gaza and tries to somehow make himself relevant, all while South Africa's own hospitals are in ruin. And yet, what? We're meant to be outraged by Gaza because of the genocide, all while people kill themselves in South Africa? The priorities are wrong. This is why the story is so important. What the hell are these people thinking? Because all this is occurring, all whilst the ANC is now facing effectively an insolvency case. This is after the Sheriff of the House Court executed a warrant of attachment on Loot Freely House, seizing office furniture, electronics, and appliances valued at a whole 140,000 rand. A token payment against the debt, which has now exceeded 85 million rand. Now, that debt, you will recall, comes from unpaid invoices to a company who provided the ANC with printing and marketing for 2019 election banners, which the ANC used for local government elections. Now, the court, the High Court, the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court, every court in the country have all confirmed that the ANC owes the money. But still, the party that somehow wants to tell the MK party that they've got no respect for the law, and the EFF, you've got no respect for the law, we must protect our constitution. Well, they just don't agree with the courts. They go, no, we reject everything the courts say. We don't believe we owe the money. It's irregular. And they're still trying to talk some trash about how, no, every court said we must pay it, but we're not going to pay it because we don't believe it's real. Now, the attorneys executing the warrants now say that the firm will now target provincial and local ANC officers and attach bank accounts. And if necessary, they'll file for liquidation of the ruling party. So for the assets seized at Loot Freely House include 100 desks, 200 chairs, 9 couches, 9 fridges, 9 microwaves, 9 coffee tables. 9 is quite a popular number in the ANC. 20 computers. Apparently that's all they have. 20 computers. 100 desks, but only 20 computers. Yes, what are these people doing? And 50 filing cabinets. Now, the ANC claims that the entire process to get them to pay this and the sum owed, politically motivated. Apparently, even though every court in the land has heard the case and said you owe the money, pay the bloody money, and they vowed to countersue, alleging fraud and irregularities in the contract. Dude, every claim that you've made, every one of these dismissals has been dismissed by the court so far. Pay the freaking debt, but they don't have the money. So the crisis now exposes the ANC's deeper rot. They've got chronic mismanagement, unpaid staff salaries for months, reliance on donors who are now all under investigations themselves, and now they've got this debt. They are going to be liquidated. Can you imagine? We have a government running a country that itself is being liquidated because it can't manage its own funds and is sitting there doing all this virtue signaling on international issues whilst their own country just collapses in front of their eyes. So what can we learn from this? Well, economic analysts are warning that the party's financial collapse could destabilize local governance itself. As the ANC uses party funds to sustain election operations and cadres deployed to public institutions, there is a suggestion that many of these individuals will now be more motivated to steal from the state and from local government in order to sustain their local branches, their local government structures. This is the suggestion being made, and if you think about it logically, it's probably smack bang on the money. So the question has to be, well, in order to save the state and even local government structures, should we not remove the ANC unilaterally? Because they are now an impediment to the state. The ANC can't afford to pay for campaign posters, and yet they're expected to run a R1 trillion state budget. We know they are going to loot this country dry further than what they already have in order to save their own bank account. And it's logical. Now, going a little bit further then, let us also recall the story of the very famous Ramon Cabanak, who was questioned on his qualifications to be the chief of staff of John Steenhuisen. And many individuals celebrated the firing of Ramon Cabanak. But in a new story, the Social Development Minister, an ANC-aligned Social Development Minister deployed by Ramaphosa, the most useless president we've ever had, is now under fire after it has emerged that her chief of staff, aged only 22 years old, earning 1.4 million rand a year, has virtually no qualifications. The individual holds a diploma in information technology and 1 year of sales and marketing experience at a local college, and yet has been appointed to one of the most powerful administrative roles in the department. Now, would you know it? She's the niece of the minister's special advisor. Well, nothing like a little case of, cater deployments, huh? With whom the special advisor is allegedly in a romantic relationship with. Oh, who knew? Now, the entire scandal has triggered a parliamentary inquiry, with the chair of the Portfolio Committee on Social Development saying that the allegations of nepotism, forgery and conflict of interest strikes at the heart of government credibility. Now, critics highlight that such scandals are systematic. They're not isolated. Young, connected individuals earning massive salaries while millions of qualified graduates remain unemployed, all because somehow they knew someone in the ANC. Now, public outrage has grown online, with many individuals noting it as being further examples of cadre deployments and ANC failure. But ultimately, you know what we can really take from this? Ramaphosa a couple of days ago said to everybody, we're going to ensure that deployment to the states is all done through competence. Here we have another example of one of Ramaphosa's deployed ministers doing nothing in relation to competence. They are using the states as nothing more than a way to self-enrich. But this has become the ANC's memo now. Let's all talk about Gaza and Palestine. Let's not worry. Let's not look at how we're looting the state. We're running things into the ground. As long as we talk about Gaza and Palestine, we're okay. Don't look over here. It's the ultimate distraction, and the distraction is growing tiresome. Now, as it's October 7th, at the time of recording, you'll be watching this on October 8th. Thought we could just end off this video by looking at old Blockade. Because in Blockade at the moment, some very interesting things have happened. You will recall that because of the online safety bill, if you now say anything in Blockade, you pretty much are bound to be arrested. So let's look at some protected by the state examples. Well, here is a doctor who made a throat slit gesture to Jews, and apparently the throat slitting gesture by a doctor, you can see the name on screen. Yeah, apparently that's not anti-Semitic. That's the right to free speech. Also, an imam who in a sermon said that you must destroy Jewish homes. Apparently, according to the Met Police, this isn't a crime. This is fine. All this whilst Shabana Mahmood noted that there had been a mosque that apparently had been set on fire in Peacehaven, and she noted with deep concern how this was. But apparently many individuals are now noticing that since 2022, when the mass invasion of the UK started, in the last 5 years there have been 150 arson attacks on UK churches, with 28 serious incidents annually, amounting to millions of pounds in damages, averaging at around 28 serious incidents annually, with millions in damages being accruing. So Grok did an assessment of Shabana Mahmood's statements and her ex-posts and noted 0 condemnations of those attacks. Very interesting as to why that might be. But rather more interesting is that immediately after the Peacehaven mosque attack, it was noted that apparently, according to some suggestions, there was no fire at the mosque. Apparently, a car parked in front of the building caught on fire, and voices captured by individuals in that vicinity believed to have been Urdu, the well-known spoken language of native England, apparently were heard leaving the scene, which has led many individuals to ask what really went on here. But anyway, these are all my opinions. Do let me know what you think of these in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.